You know, this idea is from a few days ago, but I do feel like because today is a day where we don't have any Oilers games, nor do we have any Penguins games, this makes for a good opportunity to toss this idea into the spotlight. We're going over onto Twitter, and we're taking a look at a Twitter thread made by Jonathan Willis. He's a writer on The Athletic. He primarily does stuff for the Edmonton Oilers. Take a look at this tweet that he replied to over here. It's an article published on Daily Faceoff. It's the trade targets list that Sarah Bailey highlighted a few days ago. Willis goes out there and replies to this article saying this. He comes in at the end of this list and after a more Oilers-y target in Ryan Reeves, but Kasperi Kapanen is a guy I wonder about a change of scenery flip for Edmonton. Similar money to Jesse Puljujarvi, signed a year longer, better 5v5 score and finishing history, although he has worse possession metrics. Essentially, what he's talking about is the idea of a potential Kasperi Kapanen trade over to the Oilers in exchange for one Jesse Puljujarvi. Now, we've been talking about Puljujarvi trade rumors for years now, and I say years because when I was in my first year in college in 2018, the guy was still being discussed in trade rumors, and there was the entire controversy of him leaving Edmonton, going to Finland, coming back to Edmonton, being okay, then being not okay. It's been all over the place here for Mr. JP13 himself. And we also did make a few videos already earlier this season, too, talking about the idea of a Puljujarvi trade. And so, when it comes to this specific one, I felt like it was an interesting idea to bring up because these two players being discussed are both Finns. They both actually played together on the World Junior squad in 2016, I believe it was. Yeah, they did. That was the year where Kapanen scored the overtime goal to win gold, I'm pretty sure. It's actually kind of funny because if you take a look at that season's worth of a World Junior team, I mean, Puljujarvi was the best player on the team with 17 points in 7 games played, and some really good NHL players today are kind of down there. Mikko Rantanen, for example, only had 5 points in that same tournament. Olli Juolevi had 9, so that kind of stings a little bit. But back to the main subject here, both of these players are in pretty interesting spots in their hockey teams, and a potential swap could fill that change of scenery type narrative for both of these guys. For Puljujarvi, I just wanted to go over him in a pretty quick way because we had talked about him already so much over the years, but Puljujarvi this season has not been great. Last year, he had 36 points in 65 games played, which was pretty good, but he kind of disappeared in the postseason, and he's carried over that disappearance into this year's worth of play. He's only got 5 points in 21 games played, he's on pace for 20 points on the season, and in a year where he was supposed to be fighting it out with Kailer Yamamoto for the last spot in the top 6, a lot of people in Edmonton are pretty disappointed with how the rest of this forward core outside of Nugent Hopkins, Kane, Hyman, McDavid, and Draisaitl are performing. For Puljujarvi, he's got 1 season left at $3 million a season, and he still has that reputation of being a guy that had some pretty good possession metrics and advanced analytical data from last season. All of the players in the top 6 on the Oilers played better when they played with Puljujarvi, but it wasn't because Puljujarvi is so good at scoring or because he's so good at finishing. It was quite the opposite, actually. It was mostly because Puljujarvi was such a good player when it came to the little things. The off-puck positioning on the boards, the way he read the play defensively. Not to say that he's going to become the next winger to win the Selke anytime soon, but he was good enough that he actually improved the quality of play of those around him. This season, though, that same effect hasn't necessarily been there, and his production has taken a tank because of it, and because of the contract situation, the uncertainty there are some rumors going around as to whether or not he could get traded. As for Kapanen, this is a really interesting player because he's 26 years old. He is decently sized, 6'1", 194, right-handed guy, signed till the end of 2024, making 3.2 AAV. Initially drafted by Pittsburgh, traded over to Toronto, and then traded back to Pittsburgh, Kasperi Kapanen has been at the tail end of so much praise from all the coaches he has played for, while also being the subject of criticism due to his toolbox. He has all the tools, but not the toolbox. He has all of the skills to be good in this league, but he just doesn't use them properly. He's really fast. When he really wants to, he can make a nice play, but when it comes to his on-ice awareness, his offensive IQ, it has not developed at the same rate that his raw tools have developed as well. I believe it was Mike Sullivan, or it might have been Mike Babcock, or somebody in the Toronto or Pittsburgh organization, one or the other, that said that Kapanen legitimately has what it takes to be elite in the National Hockey League. It's just, this season, the guy has 5 points in 13 games. Last year, he had 32 points in 79 games. His career high is 44 in 2018-19 with Toronto. And you also have the fact that Kasperi Kapanen has been scratched for, what is that right here? Let's take a look at the list. He's been scratched ever since November 12th, and in that last game that he played 7 minutes and 19 seconds on ice. You also had the situation where Teddy Bluger was deemed out, and they called up Hallander and played him over Kapanen as well. The only reason Kapanen even got a game on the 12th was because Hallander was sick that day. 3.2 cap hit this season, and next, have to figure a move is coming here. And so, when it comes to this idea of Kapanen going over to Edmonton for Puljujarvi in a 1-for-1 trade, let's just say, baseline, because they're pretty equally valued assets, I would think, Kapanen playing with McDavid, that sounds pretty interesting, because I feel like Kapanen is one of the only players that can actually keep up with Conor because he's so freaking fast. Kapanen is not as skilled as Connor McDavid is. He cannot handle the puck at the same speed that Connor McDavid can, but when it comes to driving the net, when it comes to keeping up and forcing rush passing options, I feel like Kapanen could actually be a pretty good addition to an Oilers squad, more so than Puljujarvi would be. We all know that this Oilers bottom six has been quite disappointing, so any extra added value I feel that you could add would not necessarily hurt, in my opinion. As for Puljujarvi going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins, I feel like if you really wanted to stretch it and say, oh, Puljujarvi was really good with Connor McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins and everybody, just imagine what he'd be like with Sidney Crosby. You think about Chris Kunitz and how Crosby-Kunitz was such a good line. Maybe Puljujarvi could rediscover that sort of side to himself, playing alongside of a star like Sid the Kid. Should we really be calling him Kid? He's 35 years old, but yeah. I don't know. Either way, it's an interesting idea to bring up because both of these teams, of course, they have franchise caliber defining forwards. The two players that we're discussing in the trade sort of have skill sets that if you tried to pull my leg, I could totally see how you would find an argument to say that Puljujarvi playing with Crosby would actually be pretty good, and Kapanen playing with McDavid would be pretty good too. I don't know. It seems like a pretty good fit to me, but like at the end of the day, this is the first time where I'm actually kind of looking at a trade idea that's said on social media and being like, yeah, that actually sounds like a pretty good idea. I don't know, man, like this normally doesn't happen. So I think you kind of hear the smile on my face now when I talk about how this idea sort of makes sense in my mind at least, and at the very least it does in the eyes of Jonathan Willis as well, because that's why he tweeted about it. Here's a reply on his initial tweet by Leigh Korchinski. I've always felt that Jesse is going to be the guy that goes the other way for a Horvat, Kane, or a Meyer type player, where they need to make the money work even after the other team eats half, but also opens up space for the summer. Willis replies saying, at the start of the year he was a good fit for that role, especially since he'd presumably have some value to a retooling team. Now that he's trending towards not getting qualified, flipping him early in a change of scenery trade seems more plausible to me. And of course for Kapanen, I mean, the guy isn't playing at all. Not because he's injured, but because the team just doesn't want to play him, so there might be a very obvious change of scenery coming here soon. But either way, talk to the comments your thoughts about this idea, Kapanen for Puljujarvi. It's one that I kind of thought about for a bit, and I was like, yeah, no, that actually does make a little bit of sense there. I kind of like that idea, because I feel like there could be some pretty good dividends either team could receive if this does work out in the best way that it could. Kapanen with McDavid, speedy line. Crosby with Puljujarvi, pretty good efficiency, pretty good possession right there. Talk to the comments on your thoughts, whether or not you agree, disagree, or have anything to add to my assessments of these players. Is there anything I'm missing when it comes to the context of Puljujarvi and Kapanen both falling out of favor with their respective teams? And do you think a change of scenery trade for either of these guys, not necessarily for each other, but just in general, is on the horizon? Talk to the comments on your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99. And bye.